Is Citizen Voices Radio back with you. We now have my interviewee, Dada, on the line. Hold on a second.
Yes.
Yeah, hey, so glad you could join us today.
Thank you, Jay.
Where are you today?
Right now, I'm just about at the Tennessee-North Carolina border. I have a program in Knoxville this weekend, and I'm going to Asheville for tomorrow.
Great. And are you on a book tour?
Yes, I am. A book tour for this new book, Tools to Change the World.
Great. It's great timing for a book like that with all the UN climate change news about the 12 years, the rise of Extinction Rebellion, all sorts of things going on. Yeah,
and I'm very inspired by Greta Thunberg from Sweden, who's doing the weekly school strikes for climate change and the Extinction Rebellion.
Yeah, she now is getting all of the students to encourage their parents to do a September 20th global climate strike.
That's great.
It is. So give us a little background about. I know you've been working for years. I remember a book on economic democracy several years ago. Tell us, and Prout. Prout is I'm familiar with from you and from my friend Clark Webb. Can you give us a brief overview of Prout?
Sure, Jay. PROUT is an acronym for the Progressive Utilization Theory, and it's an alternative social economic model, an alternative to both global capitalism and to communism. Capitalism, of course, works very well for some people, but it doesn't work for everybody. And we need a world that works for everybody. We need a world with no hunger, no poverty, and no war. It's not hard to do. The United Nations estimates we have enough food on the planet today for more than our current population. Why is there hunger today? Why are people starving? Only because it's not our priority. We need to make it our priority.
Yeah, it's an equitable distribution of resources.
Right. So we need to use tools to change the world in all sorts in order to make an impact.
Well, and I know you and
Mira Price is the co-author.
Yeah. Well, I'm thinking more broadly. You belong to Ananda Marga, which is a worldwide service organization.
Right, means the path of bliss. And I'm a monk for 41 years. I teach yoga and meditation free of charge. I spent 39 years living abroad, working in Southeast Asia mostly, and South America, and Brazil, and 10 years in Venezuela.
Wow.
I just came back to this country about 2 years ago, and now I'm traveling a lot, giving talks at bookstores, colleges, high schools, and prisons about the need for personal change, transformation, and for social change.
That's great. And how would you characterize like Prout as a alternative to both capitalism and communism? Is it Is it more a base of the common good? And how will those mechanisms be implemented?
Of course. You know, it's based on an economy of 3 tiers. Capitalism actually works well on the small scale. We should encourage free enterprise on the small scale. But once enterprises grow more than, say, 10 employees, they should transform into a cooperative in which all the owners own the business. Everyone benefits. Who gets the profits is important because that's the lion's share of the income. And when it's shared by all the workers, everybody's motivated for the enterprise to succeed.
Exactly.
And finally, there's a top tier, which is public utilities, owned by the local government, running on a no-profit, no-loss basis for the benefit of the entire economy and the society. So an economy like this could work well. It would stimulate local economies, sustainable local economies, encourage every region to become self-sufficient in the minimum necessities of life, for sure, as self-sufficient as possible, encourage trade, equal fair trade between equals, especially barter trade is an excellent way. And finally, it's based also on environmental protection and ethical values. The idea all the members of one human family, we have to treat one another like brothers and sisters, and we have to make an economy and a society that works for everybody, not just for a few.
Yeah, I mean, I know there have been some ideas that have come up in the last few years within, mostly in the democratic political side of things,
Sure.
such as free college tuition, which seems to be something that the mainstream is kind of like, what, but it's been shown in several European countries to really add so much in the long term to society.
Jay, I've been working in South America and Latin America for 21 years. And there's this one term I can never translate, student loans.
Oh.
They don't get it. How can you possibly go into debt, serious debt, just by going to school?
Oh, no.
The best universities all through Latin America are state-run, and they're free. The private, if you don't get into the state universities, because they have tough exams and there's a lot of competition, if you can't get into the state universities, then you have to go to a private college. And that's more expensive. That costs like $350 every semester for your tuition.
Right.
They don't understand how you can possibly get so seriously into debt just by going to college. They don't get it.
Right. I guess the capitalistic argument is that with that debt, it makes you work harder to pay it off. But that's a big impediment. I know people who their student loan payments more than their rent, and that's not sustainable.
It's crazy. It's unjust. It's unfair. It's not reasonable, and there's no reason for it.
Right. Well, there is a reason for it. It's basically greed.
Yes, that's true. But colleges can pay good salaries to all the teachers, without charging exorbitantly.
So, in order to implement that, it seems like there'd be some hurdles of resistance especially from banks, but also from other corporate interests. How do we seduce them into this idea?
Yeah. Well, credit unions are cooperative banks.
Yes.
Banks that are run cooperatively. So all the members own the bank. So they're not beholden to big investors. So they focus on giving loans to students, to households, to car owners, to local businesses, instead of using their money mostly for investment, for profit. There's one bank, the State Bank of North Dakota. It's the only state-owned bank in the country. There are initiatives now in California and other places to open state-owned banks because it's the same thing. It's owned by the people. It's not owned by the investors.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, that's, people aren't looking for a return the same way as people who are like trying to invest their money and make profit.
And, you know, for individuals, you still put your money in the bank. You still get your, you know, your checking account. You still get you have a savings account if you want. You know, you get a small amount of interest. It's the big, very rich people aren't happy with a small return on their investment. They have a lot of money. They're willing to risk it for huge profits. You know, 2% a year, they don't want that. That's boring for them. And that's the problem. We need to cut out that big investors and focus on the small returns, you know, so that everybody benefits, so that money is flowing in the community and people can afford to buy a house, to rent a house, and to start a small business and a cooperative.
Yeah, this sounds like it would really be a foundational thing, security and stability for society, which is not the case now.
It's a form of progressive socialism.
Right.
Where the major resources, the largest resources of the area are owned by the people. They're never privatized. They're never given away. We're talking about the electromagnetic wave bands, you know, for the you know, the radio and telecommunications. We're talking about the major electricity, the major utilities, our public utilities, owned by the state. They're responsible to the people and to the state, not to investors.
Yeah, I mean, just the whole idea of stock, being a stockholder, takes, it's very Cartesian in that it takes the idea of profit away from any sort of ethical bounds when you buy into that, and that's a big disconnect for the good of society, for the benefit. The benefit is tossed aside. You know, they don't care when they invest in a company, in a corporation, whether they're polluting the environment, as long as they get the return.
Sure. One thing about cooperatives, Jay, is that cooperatives, they're local. So the local people are concerned about their local environment. They're concerned they're not polluting, that they're saving their resources, they're saving their land, their people, their community. They're not polluting the groundwater.
Yeah.
Cooperatives make sense. And you know, Jay, many people are unaware how successful cooperatives are, actually. You know, around the world, 1 out of every 7 people is a member of a cooperative.
Wow.
And cooperatives provide more than 200,000 jobs. So, in this country, you know, so they're providing a lot of jobs, and more than that, they're much more likely to succeed. Actually, there's no statistics about the failure rate of new businesses in this country. The government announces the statistics about how many new businesses are created. They never announce how many businesses fail. They never do the statistics. They never gather the necessary data. It's estimated that 60% of new businesses fail in the first 5 years, for sure. And it's like 40% fail in the first year. Those are very conservative estimates. Cooperatives, there's so few cooperatives being created that they are watched very carefully. And it's 12% fail in 5 years. They're much more likely to succeed. They're hard to start, but when everybody's working together, they succeed much better than private businesses do, actually.
Yeah, I know I've been a member of several food co-ops because I've been in the natural foods industry for the last 35 years. And they do pretty well. I'm a member of the Richmond Food Co-op, which has been building for the last 5 years. It's still not off the ground, but I have an interest in it. I put in a
Sure.
seed capital, which is the way. That's the way to start businesses, is to empower people
Sure.
to take care of their own, resources. Really.
Sure.
When I lived in New Hampshire, they had an electric cooperative,
Right.
and
Also.
they also had competition.
Right.
Here in Virginia, it's a monopoly owned by
Right.
a very Orwellian named company called Dominion Energy.
Right.
Well, it used to be worse. They called themselves Dominion Power, which is
Right.
wow. It's like, okay, yeah, they dominate, and there's a lot of corruption that goes along with that because they have all the politicians paid off. And
Jay, we need economic democracy. We have political democracy, but without, Noam Chomsky said, without a functioning economic democracy, political democracy can't work. Why? Because obviously big money controls elections a lot.
Right, with Citizens United.
Right, and we need an economy of the people, by the people, and for the people, with strong local economies that work. When you buy at a box store, when you buy at a huge restaurant chain, a national chain, 90 cents of your dollar leaves the community.
Right.
Most of it goes to investors. When you buy at a local restaurant, a local store, a local business, most of your money stays in the community. So
good point.
Support and it circulates,
Yeah, I mean there has been a support local movement,
right.
Especially within the natural foods industry, which is a lot of the stores have to go up against Whole Foods or some other place that's going to undercut them.
Well, even Whole Foods is better than the traditional ones. I mean, at least they're thinking about healthy food now.
Yes.
In the past, that was foreign. But now everybody's concerned about healthy food, organic food, and as far as possible, as you're talking about in the co-op, of course, is locally grown food. We're not paying for things to be shipped around the planet to us.
Oh, local farmers markets.
Locally grown food.
Yeah, local farmers markets and community-supported agriculture are a great example of what you're a proponent of. Yeah.
Sure. And CSA farms, community-supported agriculture.
Yes. Yeah, that's right. It also puts people back in touch with where their food comes from, which I think is really important to realize.
Yeah. But don't all fruits and vegetables grow in a supermarket?
I know. I've known people involved in school garden projects to teach children.
Right.
Put their hands in the dirt, and we don't want to be too denatured to function in nature. Right.
And urban gardening, another great initiative.
Yep. Stop raising all that grass that you have to cut every week and put a garden in instead. That just seems common sense.
In your yard, yes.
Yeah, it's much more beautiful than grass.
Sure.
Yeah. So you've been on tour for this book for a while now.
Right.
What kind of reception have you gotten?
Great reception. For example, I talk in a lot of colleges and high schools. They're just closing now, so I just finished the tour. I was at University of Radford. I was at American University. I was at Bethesda, Chevy Chase High School. I was in Floyd at Alternative High School and Elementary School. I was at UMass Boston.
Where you were in Floyd?
Indiana State University. I travel a lot.
You said you
and
were.
Every time when I go in, I give these little feedback forms to the students. They just ask two questions. It says, what surprised you most is politics and the next place. Real simple, not non-threatening, And I give it to all the students before I go in. And at the end of the class, I ask them to drop them off. Jay, 99% of the comments are very positive. At the very end, I do a real short, a 5-minute meditation with them. A lot of the students express how great that made them feel, helps them calm down. A lot of students admit that they're going through anxiety, they're going through depression, they're suffering insomnia. And meditation helps all these things.
Yeah.
Helps you to calm down, stay centered, and the students love it. They really, I mean, I'm surprised, really, how much they enjoy just 5 minutes of meditation.
That's great.
And at the same time, I'm teaching all the tools to change the world. I'm teaching, another way to look at the world and look at the society around us. So the comments are really positive. And I talk about love because I think love is at the basis.
Yeah.
I talk about the power of love and that we have the power to change our way of looking at the world. And I tell them always, I think you're living in the most exciting moment in history.
Exactly.
We've reached changing. You guys are living it.
We're at a tipping point, apparently, by all signs that I can see. You said you spoke in Floyd, Virginia?
Yes.
Where did you speak?
Spring House, community school, and the Blue Mountain School.
Great. I'm familiar. I'm familiar with there. I have friends in Floyd.
Yes. Great
good.
People.
Yeah. So within the book, can you lay out a few of the tools?
Right. Some of the tools are, they're funny things. One of them is public speaking. Because if you have the power to electrify an audience, you've got a lot of power to influence people in a good way. So that's one of the simple ones. Another one is consciousness raising groups. I tell them I'm in the consciousness raising business. And actually, that's what excites me the most, is how much our consciousness is changing. So just for example, I tell the students that throughout my lifetime, it was commonly known that very rich and powerful men, some of them, use their power to exploit women sexually if they wanted a job or wanted to keep their jobs. Suddenly, in just 2 years, that's no longer acceptable. More than 240 very rich and powerful men have been fired and publicly condemned, a couple even going to jail for their sexual misconduct. How did it happen? Because one woman overcame the natural guilt and shame that people feel to publicly tell her story. And I say one woman because even as thousands of women have done it, everyone has to do it herself, And there's now more than 30 countries that have Me Too movements. It's a sea change in terms of consciousness. It didn't exist all my lifetime. I don't know about you.
No, the Me Too movement, I think, is a really good sign of moving in the right direction. Just like the school kids rising up against gun violence, and also now for the climate. Exactly.
Another very good positive initiative. It hasn't changed yet, but they're not quitting, and I'm not quitting. We have to keep working until we can make peace in this world. And it takes a lot of fight. And that's what this Tools to Change the World is about. And that's why meditation is actually one of the tools too. Because you need to keep your hope. You need to keep your positive outlook. You need to keep your inspiration in order to inspire others. Together, nothing's impossible. Together, we can change the world. But that daily meditation helps to renew our sense of peace and calm and our energy to keep working and keep fighting, even when it looks hopeless.
Well, I know. I meditate, and I've studied some. I learned TM
right
quite a while ago, and I know that
I can imagine
it changes your brain, because you generate alpha brain waves, which are more calming, and and that within a given population, if you reach a certain percentage of people that meditate regularly, it changes it's like the vibration from that influences the people around it, and so the conflicts and violence go way down.
Very true. And I tell the students, there are meditation techniques from around the world.
Yes.
But they basically have 5 factors in common. One of them is to close your eyes. Okay, Zen Buddhists have their eyes half closed, but they're sitting in front of a blank white wall, so there's nothing to look at.
Right.
So closing your eyes first. Second, sitting straight and still, not moving, but with your back straight, so you're fully awake and conscious. Third, breathing deeply, because breathing deeply, or what they call diaphragmatic breathing, really changes your state of mind. If you run in late to a class or something and you're out of breath and you say, just a minute, I can't think, let me catch my breath. Because when you're breathing fast, your thinking is fast. And when you slow down your breathing, really deep, really slow, your mind will automatically slow down too. Fourth technique, I say, of course, is to focus the mind. And it's different for different people, different techniques,
Yes, yeah.
I come from India, so I use a mantra technique, which is a sound which frees the mind. And finally, practice every day. So those 5 factors are common to almost every system of meditation in the world. So there's really more in common than different between all these different types of meditation.
Yeah. Really, it retrains your brain.
Yes.
And it helps not to be in fight or flight mode all the time, which
and not to be so afraid, and not to be so nervous, and not to be so upset.
Yeah, and it's certainly a lot of things that will always pop up, even if you're meditating, that could upset you. But I think that if your brain is more tranquil, it will be rattled less easily.
Right. Yeah, the problems are still there when you finish your meditation.
Yeah, chop wood,
but
carry water.
You're in a different state of mind to see more calmly and clearly what's the way out.
Yeah, like the saying, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment,
right.
Chop wood, carry water.
After enlightenment, you still chop wood and carry water. The Zen statement, right?
Yeah, it's more about how we live our lives than what we do.
Yes, but it's totally different.
Yeah.
When you become enlightened, you find joy and happiness in everything, even in the struggles, even in the obstacles. Even in the pain that comes, you can still be at peace and find joy. It's a paradox, but it's true.
Yeah. Well, I'm just curious now as to like Prout successes, places where that have been influenced by this. Are there any examples that you can give us?
Around the world, there are different Prout projects and small communities. No country has yet implemented Prout on a national scale. So it's still new in that respect.
Yeah.
I always tell people, there's two things here. One is what we want, and two is how we get there.
Yeah.
I think it's really important to have a clear vision of the world that we want. And this is something that Proud offers, a very clear and logical and rational way to run an economy, to run a society, to run politics, to get money out of politics, how to run an economic democracy and a fair and just political democracy. The second question, how do we get there? It's not so hard when we choose what we want, because together nothing is impossible. We can achieve anything. So this is how I give my talks. Around the world examples, I used to work in Venezuela with a lot of cooperatives there. We ran the Proud Research Institute of Venezuela for 10 years. It's still functioning, still working with cooperatives, but the country's in a tragedy right now, a lot of chaos, partly because of mistakes that the government's made, economic mistakes, and in large part because of the U.S. embargo, which is stopping even medicines from getting in. It's a problem. It's a big problem.
Yeah, and I know there's been some contention within the government. There was troubles with the Venezuelan embassy over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, sad. They just took it over. Yeah, they stopped the occupation because it belongs to the Venezuelan people, who have elections every 45 years. And they have the right to choose the people they want. You know, the Carter Foundation has observed the elections. They're free and fair. They're not cheating on the elections. The reason they keep winning is because so many people remember what it used to be like before Chavez came to power. It was much worse for most of the people, the poor. And they don't want to go back to that. That's why the opposition has never yet been able to unite the majority of the people. So it's why the country is so torn today. The military is torn. The people are torn. It's sad. And everybody who loves Venezuela, like I do, feels a lot of pain in their heart to see the suffering. I hope they can reach a compromise, because dialogue and communication is very important, and both sides have been rather bad listeners. They have not been trying to dialogue and learn from each other and work together to solve the problems of the country. And until they do, it'll never work. Actually, there are parallels with this country.
Well, I was just thinking that same thing, yeah.
Until both parties can work together, even like the infrastructure. Why can't we agree on the infrastructure to, improve that? Well, the president says no because you're trying to, stop the investigations before I can agree to anything. It's sad.
It is. Well, as I recall, the Chinese character for crisis is also the character for opportunity.
Exactly.
And we live in these interesting times at a tipping point when, getting people to know about Prout may be a long-term process, but it takes a lot to turn the ship around. But we're under, this is the time to spread that word, and I want to promote your book as much as possible.
Sure, thank you.
Because we need that. We badly need it. Because the corporate profit interests are kind of like lemmings, heedless of their own destruction. Right,
especially about climate change. And really only in this country, it's very hard for other countries to understand what we're doing. The rest of the world realizes there's a problem, and the United States denies it.
Well, it takes a lot to shake us out of our complacency. Living in suburbia, with, you know, 2 cars and kids. People get wrapped up in their own lives until it's really badly threatened, which is starting to dawn on people now.
Right.
And it's up to us to sound the alarm that, hey, take action now before it hits 120 degrees in the summer.
Right, Jay. True. Can I say just a little bit about how to get the book?
Please, by all means, yes.
For free from prout.org. That's PROUT dot. Oh, wait a minute. I'm sorry. Prout.info. INFO for information. Prout.info. You can download the book for free. You can also buy it from Amazon, or you can ask your local bookstore to order it.
I actually already posted a link for prout.info on the feed for the show.
Great.
Where on the web page do you go?
I'm sorry, what?
I was wondering once you go to that website, I'm looking at it right now.
Yes.
There are, you know, articles, resources, Prout in Action.
Resources.
It's under resources. Okay.
Resources.
Oh, I see.
It says it says Tools to Change the World Study Guide.
Yes. Okay, great. I will go to that link and
Thank you.
Post that also.
Thank you.
That's worth knowing about.
Yeah. The headquarters is in Copenhagen, Denmark, and they have a large community there with sustainable agriculture and cooperative bakery, and it's an exciting office there in Copenhagen. Every year they have a Prout convention with about 500 people, a lot of young people coming and volunteers coming to work there and learn from the Prout. We also, in this country, in Eugene, Oregon, there's a Prout Institute that volunteers can go and take classes and courses at the Prout Institute in Eugene, Oregon.
And do they have meetings both in Copenhagen and Eugene?
Yes.
And those will
of course, in many other countries, too. I'm just mentioning the closest ones here.
And I see also there's a tab on the website for podcasts.
Right. Also.
That's great.
Another
those are valuable.
Is ProutUSA.org. That's what I was confused about before. ProutUSA.org is another site, which is based just in the United States. And as I said, the Prout Institute also.
Okay, I'll promote those also.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's really encouraging that we have people working on answers.
Right.
Rather than just complaining
and the
about
other tools we mentioned in the book are like unpacking privilege, which is important to understand where injustice comes from, unpacking privilege, leadership training, how to capture media attention, how to start a cooperative, consciousness raising, as I mentioned, one-on-one interviews, how to tell your story, which is very important, how to inspire other people to join in your initiatives to change the world. We tried to make all the tools as practical as possible that can be learned and immediately put into practice. How to become a more effective activist, a more effective organizer, how to start changing the world.
Yeah, well, that's great. Unfortunately, I'm going to help spread the word because we have a populist movement, as you may know, against the frack gas pipelines going on here, and I think that's a great audience for this message. And
that's important.
Yeah, I'll do my best to pass the word on to those folks.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, and there's just in the last couple of weeks, there have been Extinction Rebellion chapters popping up all over the state. You know, with the proximity to DC, I think it's really important that those people who want to be active
Sure.
not only voice their objections, but have a plan. And I think Prout is a great plan versus like just saying vote Democratic. You know, that's still the Democrat. The candidates, the party itself is largely corporate funded, so that's going to be small change maybe if they can talk their way into it. We'll see what happens. There's a lot.
Jay, you know, the strategy they used in Great Britain, they kept getting all these middle class people to sign up that they're willing to get arrested for climate change. So the police, even though they didn't really want to arrest a lot of people, they had to arrest 1,000 people this time.
Yeah.
And the national government declared a national emergency for climate change. They haven't done a lot yet, but just that declaration that the government recognizes it as an emergency. Can you imagine the United States government declaring that?
Not the current one.
The implications that would have on the policies that we're following when it's actually a national emergency and recognizing that. People can make that happen by taking action, direct action, civil disobedience, and making that statement with their own lives that this is important. This has to be done now. It's exciting times, Jay, that we're living in.
It is. I'm involved with a group called the Interfaith Alliance for Climate Justice.
Right.
Which it's some spiritual leaders who are getting together to help support those people who are taking action, who are being activists. And
it's great.
And you know, there's all sorts of corporate theft of people's property. Through the use of eminent domain, which is really egregious, since it's for a corporate profit. So yeah, it benefits the stockholders, but not the people who lose their land.
Sure.
Or have to face up to the possibility that there will be a leak in the pipeline that might explode.
Right.
And that's a problem all over the country. And that's just, I think, a great example of the abuse of corporate power and influence in the government.
All right.
All those things. Well,
Jay, I'm going to have to go now.
Yeah, I was going to say, thank you so much for calling in. This has been really great information, and I encourage everyone to check out the links that we posted. Thank you so much. I'd love to catch up with you offline sometime.
Good.
Safe travels.
Yeah. Okay. Talk to you later.
All right. Wow, that was really interesting information about a way out of this predicament that we're in. Well, I mean, we need to return to democracy, and I'm hoping that the tools for change will be tools to change the world. That's the name of the book that Dada Maheshwarananda, who's a member of, he's a monk in an organization called Ananda Marga, which does a lot of relief work around the world. They've been busy in Haiti, I know, and other third world countries that have been many times affected by global climate change, which wipes out their infrastructure. And that's where sort of all of us have a problem with that taking place eventually. I mean, because when you have that kind of situation that creates an unstable environment and political scene, then you have refugees coming to where they think it's safe, which for many of them has been this country. So rather than demonizing those people from running away from military and gang violence, we should welcome them in and give them a place that they can feel safe and raise their children. And of course, we know the debacle that has gone on with putting children in jail, basically, because they've showed up with their parents often, and they've been separated from their parents, and there's been no real accounting. So these children and their parents are disconnected with no way to find out where each other is. Time for change, folks. Rise up. Use your electoral voices. Vote. It's more crucial than ever before. The time right now is 4:03. You're listening to WRWK LP FM, 93.9 on your FM dial, and serving the greater Richmond metro area, including the counties of Chesterfield, where we are here in Midlothian. Our stations in Midlothian, near Huguenot and Chippenham. Huguenot, and Midlothian. And also the counties of Henrico, Hanover, Goochland, and Powhatan. So thanks for listening to the show. We're going to have some people call in just a minute. And let's see here. All right. All right. Lots going on around the world. There are people rising up in Great Britain, in Germany. In Germany, there's a movement called Ende Gelände that has shut down coal mines by showing up. I think they got 8,000 people to show up, and they shut it down. They put up tree sits. We have two people in trees in Southwest Virginia right now, which has been going on for like 260 days. Over in Germany, they did like 10 people in trees to block forced clear cutting for profit. And we've got a couple of activists from here in Virginia, actually over there, hanging out with those people. Maybe they'll bring back some good information. And okay, my next guest can't call in right now, so I will bide time.